Hi everyone, this is Syrian Girl. This is one of the most important videos I'm going to make. It's about plans to Balkanize Syria. I've talked and written about this numerous times over the years, but now it has become obvious to everyone. Last month, Kerry came out and affirmed everyone's suspicions. He called for Syria to be partitioned and said it was part of Plan B if negotiations fail. But in reality, this was always Plan A. Plans to Balkanize Syria and Iraq were laid out by former US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in 2006 in Tel Aviv. It was called the Project for a New Middle East. This was a carbon copy of the Odid Yinon plan drawn up by Israel in 1982. The plan is to create a bunch of weak mini-states that will be in perpetual war with each other and never united enough to throw back their colonial chains. The powers who started the wars in both Syria and Iraq did it to redraw borders on a map. The blood of millions of innocent people, your sons, our sons, and children, was spilt over this objective. The very fabric of entire nations ripped apart because of these people's plans. Well-meaning people might say, but federalism doesn't sound so bad. The point that these people are missing is that the borders of the federal states would be drawn along sectarian lines, not on whether a state can sustain its population. This means that a small amount of people will get all the resources and the rest will be left to starve. The areas they are trying to carve out, the coastal area of Latakia and the region of Al-Hasakeh in Syria, are where all the resources, water and agriculture and oil is. They want to leave the majority of Syrian population in a landlocked, starving rump state and create a situation where there is going to be an inevitable perpetual war between divided Syrians. Ironically, they try to paint federalism as a road to peace, because Iraq has been so peaceful since they introduced federalism in 2005, right? You see, people say that Iraq was a mistake, but I say Iraq is exactly how the neocons intended it to be. They achieved the following in Iraq and Syria: introducing Al-Qaeda, removing chemical weapons, destroying oil infrastructure, and general destruction. So far, they haven't fully succeeded in weakening the Syrian army as they did in Iraq, where the army was disbanded, nor have they fully succeeded in spreading sectarianism, as Syria still doesn't allow religious-based political parties. And finally, they look like they're failing on federalism. The actions of the occupation in Iraq drove Iraq into a civil war. They were even caught red-handed trying to ignite a sectarian war. British SAS were caught, dressed up as terrorists, firing on Iraqi police in Basra. Paul Bremer, American head of Iraq at the time, picked the Iraqi sock puppets that wrote federalism into the constitution. Quite simply, divide and conquer is the plan. They don't even deny it. It is literally in their headlines. This is from Foreign Policy magazine, the CEO of which is linked to the CFR, a think tank that Hillary Clinton has admitted to obeying. Here's another one from Foreign Policy, written by an ex-NATO commander. It's time to talk about partitioning Syria. Why is it time? Was it scheduled in his calendar? Take a look at the words of Satan himself, Henry Kissinger, which I will paraphrase as, Balkanization is what I'm hoping for. Syria is not a historical state. It was a construct by Sykes-Picot. The lie that Syria was invented by France and Britain is also used by ISIS in their propaganda videos to convince followers why it's okay to rape and pillage Syria. The reality is that Syria has been Syria for thousands of years. The Greeks and the Roman Empire referred to Syria as Syria since before Christ. Syria, the Levant, is the birthplace of civilization and the origin of phonetic languages. The word phonetic comes from Phoenicia, which is ancient Syria. To say that Syria is not a historical state is laughable. If Syria isn't a historical state, no state is. The only thing that Sykes-Picot borders were wrong on is that historical Syria included Lebanon and Iskandarun. The only federal Syria that would make any sense would be a federal state of Lebanon that's incorporated into the rest of natural Syria. You see, these people don't want to control Syria. They want to wipe Syria from existence, and that includes erasing Syrian history. This is why ISIS has been targeting both Syrian and Iraqi historical sites. The plan was to empower extremists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and bring in Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who repeatedly talk about slaughtering Alawites. They were supposed to overwhelm the Syrian army and begin slaughtering Alawites and Christians. Then, the NATO-backed media was planning on doing a narrative shift from evil dictator must be stopped to we have to protect the minorities, i.e. give them separate states. You can notice that some of that narrative shift had already started to happen in 2014 when it was used to convince the US public that the US military needed to go into Syria. But these federalization plans seem to have failed. They underestimated the patriotism of the Syrian people. The Syrian army protected the minorities from terrorism. The people did not become desperate and accept division. So, when federalization was brought up in Geneva, both sides of the Syrian conflict rejected it. The Syrian foreign minister and the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations both said that federalism isn't even on the table. So if all Syrians are against federalism, why bring it up? Even the Kurdish groups among the opposition in Geneva rejected it. You see, there is a difference between a Syrian Kurd and a Kurd in Syria. Many of the Kurds came to Syria as illegal immigrants in the 1920s when they were hired by the Ottoman Empire to slaughter Assyrians and Armenian Christians. The Turks granted the Kurds the land of their victims as a reward. Since then, they continue to come to Syria from Turkey in waves. But Kurds are still not a majority in the areas that they are claiming belongs to them. Those areas are still inhabited by the original inhabitants, the Assyrian Christians, Armenians, and Arab Bedouins, not just Kurds. It boggles my mind that people want to give Syria's oil and resources to 6% of its population. Syria is for all Syrians, and I'm going to make a video exclusively about this. The US position has been clear, but what about the Russian position in all this? There's been a lot of rumors. Kremlin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said Russia is committed to the territorial integrity of Syria. Russia's deputy foreign minister, Bogdanov, said it was nonsense to say Russia is pushing for federalism, that such an idea would be up to the Syrians, but that Russia wouldn't recommend it. So, they have made themselves clear. On the other hand, when Assad said in an interview that every part of Syria will be returned, Churkin, who is Russia's representative to the United Nations, said, if they proceed on the basis that no ceasefire is necessary and need to fight to a victorious end, then this conflict will last a very long time, and that is terrifying to imagine. He could strictly have been speaking about the ceasefire, but this statement came right before Lavrov made a statement about federalization being okay with Russia if the Syrians so choose it. So, it's led to a lot of speculation on Russia's position. The Russian and Syrian state have a long, reliable alliance. This war began partly because Assad rejected a gas pipeline deal that would weaken the Russian economy. The Russian people are also friends of the Syrian people. There are 100,000 Russian Syrians of mixed ancestry. Russian soldiers have spilt their blood alongside Syrian soldiers. So, why these inconsistencies? Some people speculate that there could be a fifth column in Russian politics influenced by the Zionist lobby, who are convinced that Israel and Kurdistan would be better allies. Which is ironic, since Israel is the kind of ally that attacks you when it can, like it did with the USS's Liberty. This kind of mentality is to the detriment of Russia and Syrian-Russian relations and shall be routed. It's people like this that are the reason that Serbia might be joining NATO. I asked a Syrian soldier how he and other soldiers felt when they heard Lavrov and Churkin's statements at the time. This was before Russia denied support for federalizing Syria. أهلا وسهلا بكم. أنا ميمي اللحام. هي أول مقابلة إلي بالعربي على قناة باليوتيوب. التضيف اليوم جندي من الجيش العربي السوري. شكرا يا عرف على وجودك معنا لنحكي على اقتراح لافروف بأنه تكون سوريا دولة فيدرالية.
أهلا وسهلا فيك.
صار لك قديش وقت مع الجيش العربي السوري؟
لي بحدود ال4 سنين عم قاتل مع الجيش العربي السوري.
شو تقطعت ورا تصريح لافروف بأنه سوريا لازم تكون دولة فيدرالية؟
أول شيء خروج روسيا من المستنقع السوري للأزمة. ثاني شيء إنه هيدا مشروع أمريكي مثل ما قسموا العراق سابقا. ضمن هيدا المشروع قسموه عم يحاولوا يعملوا نفس الشيء كرمال يخلصوا من الأزمة هون، وكرمال حطوا هيدا الموضوع لأنه هو موضوع أمريكي سابقا، ليكون للمساومة بين الروسي والأمريكي كنقطة مشتركة، والضغط كذلك على الدولة التركية عن طريق الأزمة التركية الكردية.
وشو رأيك وشو رأية الجيش على صورة العام عن اقتراح روسي لأنه سوريا لازم تكون دولة فيدرالية؟
مش عنا بالخيانة بعد كل ما هدرنا من دم وجهد يروح على الفاضي. هذا الشيء مطلب أمريكي من أول الأزمة، يعني كل شيء صار على الفاضي ما استفدنا شيء.
ممكن في ناس يعني متابعين معنا ما بيفهموا ليش الفيدرالية شغلة سيئة لسوريا، ممكن تشرح وتعطي رأيك؟
هلا مبدأ الفيدرالية أو مبدأ الحدود هو حدود طائفية. الفيدرالية السورية هذا المبدأ مرفوض، هو أول خطوة للفيدرالية، ثاني خطوة للتقسيم الطائفي. والشغلة الثانية الفيدرالية السورية كفيدرالية كدولة صغيرة مثل سوريا، هذا بيعني إنه الأقليات تكون بناحية صغيرة، والأكثرية بنسبة قليلي الطعام وشرب بدهم يعانوا من أزمات اقتصادية هائلة إن صار التقسيم أو الفيدرالية. فهذا الشيء بيؤدي إنه هجوم هيدون لمناطق اللي بيحتوي على موارد الأكل والشرب، حتى تصير كمبدأ إنه نحن بسوريا ضمن دولة عم نقاتل كشعب كجيش. إذا صارت الفيدرالية فهذا الجيش بده يتقسم حسب كل مدينة، مثلا جيش لدرعا خاص في درعا. معناته الجيش كله اللي صرفه لما كان عم يقاتل، كل الجيش بكل طوافه بدرعا أو بإدلب أو بحماة أو بدير الزور أو بريف اللاذقية أو بالشام، هول كلهم عم يقاتلوا، وراح كل شيء عم اشتغلنا بهذا المشروع الأمريكي الروسي إذا اعتبرناه هيك.
بعض المحللين في أمريكا بيقولوا إنه تقسيم سوريا هو لحماية الأقليات، شو رأيك بهذا الشيء؟
هلا حماية الأقليات مثل ما حكيت بشوي، الأقلية إذا آه، بدك تحميها فلازم تحافظي على الهيكلية الفسيفسائية. فهذا الشيء ما حيحمي الأقليات وتقسيمها، بالعكس بده يزيد السوء والوضع وحراشة الوضع بالنسبة للأقليات في سوريا. فهذا الشيء أكيد بده يضر ضرر كبير جدا يعني.
طب إذا تأكدت إنه العالم وروسيا وأمريكا بيدافعوا عن دولة علوية مثلا، ترضى بهذا الشيء؟
أكيد لا. أي دولة علوية، أي دولة أو أي حدا بيفكر بمبدأ إنه يكون في دولة لطائفة ما معينة أو لأي مذهب معين خارج عن مذهب القومي السوري، يعني مذهب سورية واحدة متوحدة بكل فصائلها وكل معتقداتها، وهذا بيميزها، وكل ديمقراطيتها المتوحدة في ممارسة الأديان كافة. فهذا مبدأ، هذا بيؤدي إلى تفكيك المجتمع السوري، ويؤذي مجموعته، ويؤذي ويخون بلده وأرضه حتى شعبه وناسه اللي عم يحاول يحميه.
شكرا كتير لأنه جيت على البروجرام تبعي وعطيتنا رأيك اليوم. إن شاء الله تجي مرة تانية ونحكي سياسة.
إن شاء الله يا رب. تشرفت بمعرفتكم، تشرفت بهالمقابلة، إن شاء الله نكون على حسن الاستماع مستمعين.
مع السلامة. Please subscribe for more news and analysis.